Here, Shakti and Shaktiman indicate energy and the possessor of an energy. Parashya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. The absolute truth is possessed of energies. There is some head in this music. They come. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. So the absolute truth is possessed of energies. Vividhaiva. So many different kind of energies. Krishna has three principal energies: the material energy, the marginal energy, and spiritual energy. Without energy, you have impersonalism. Without energy, there is no meaning to personality of Godhead. You just have a homogeneous substance. But the Shastras say otherwise. The absolute truth has so many different kind of energy. Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta Kshetragnakya Tathapara. Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tritiya Shakti Ishyate. There are three kind of energy: material, spiritual, and marginal. Say you have a fireplace. If there were a fire in the fireplace, then heat and light would spread throughout the room. Although the fire is in one place, the energy is distributed. The heat of the fire wouldn't just be in the fireplace. So there must be heat, there must be light. Otherwise, what is the meaning of fire? Can it be cold? No. There must be heat and light. Then it's called fire. Just as the sun means there must be a sunshine, and sunshine means there must be sun. So Krishna means Krishna with his energies. Without energy, there is no meaning of Krishna. And without Krishna, how can the energy exist? So now we are hearing of the Swarupa Shakti, the internal energy. That energy is Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of the personality of Godhead. And Sri Krishna is Shaktiman, the person to whom the energy belongs. Together, they are described as Gandharva Giridhari, Radha Krishna Yugal. Together, they are the complete absolute truth. Their activities are Visuddha Chitta Vilas. Chitta Vilas, spiritual activities, and Visuddha, completely pure. Not only Suddha, but Visuddha, absolutely pure. So this energy is exactly the opposite of the energy of the material world. In the material world, everything is motivated, contaminated, and unconstitutional, because those who are meant to give enjoyment to Krishna are trying to enjoy independently as if they were Krishna. So they are trying to do that through the medium of this material energy, which they are trying to exploit while at the same time getting entangled. Manaha Sastra Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati, Bhagavad Gita 15:7. The soul struggle with the mind and senses, the physical body and the mental, subtle body, Prakriti Sthani Karshati, struggling and trying to enjoy. But The loving dealings of Radha and Krishna's are manifestation of purity. They have nothing to do with the contaminated business of this material world. Therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami advises his mind to turn away from hypocrisy, from deceit, from the false project for enjoyment in the material world, and turn toward the service of the absolute truth. Krishna with his spiritual internal energy, and that's the plea to the mind. The directions to the mind are the instructions to the mind. So we will stop here and then we will now dwell in the life of Jayanand Prabhu, a great Vaishnavas. We are so fortunate that in our moment those personality appear. And when we will read their life, we can learn so many things. The test of a theory is in implementation. While one can spend a lot of time analyzing the process of bhakti, faith readily comes when one sees the theory in action. Jayanand Prabhu is such a devotee who exemplified in an almost classical manner the process of bhakti from inception to completion. When he left his body day before the Narsingha Chaturdashi, Srila Prabhupada instructed that his disappearance day should be celebrated as that of a great Vaishnava. Observing the pastime of such devotee greatly reaffirms one's faith in the process of bhakti. So Jim Core was the all-American boy, handsome, strong, intelligent, born in an upper middle class family, a good student. He took a degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State University. However, despite his outward trapping of success, he was often unhappy, empty, and dissatisfied with the material conception of life. Jim did not fit into the upper class world. So it was not very surprising that he ended up driving cabs in San Francisco. Though an introspective person, he was not really religious. His depression was almost suicidal when in 1967 he happened to read a small article in the San Francisco paper about an Indian Swami who had come to the Bay Area to propagate the chanting of the names of God. For some reason, the article ignited a ray of hope within him. He resolved to attend the lecture of the Indian Swami. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:16, Krishna says, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. The distressed, desire of wealth, inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. So Jim was searching for answers from the material miseries, and such a mood took his first step toward his destiny. I think that Jayanand Prabhu is representing all of us. Jim was instantly attracted to the Indian Swami, who was none other than Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON. He had been in the USA for only a year and was in the process of establishing his mission of bringing Krishna consciousness to the Western world. Jim began to regularly attend the morning Bhagavatam lecture of Srila Prabhupada. On some occasion, Jim would be the only guest listening to the morning lecture. Soon he became very attached to Srila Prabhupada and his teachings. Prabhupada lovingly reciprocated and would sometimes personally cook prasadam for Jim and show him. Soon thereafter, Srila Prabhupada accepted Jim as his disciple and initiated him with the spiritual name Jayananda. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 19:151, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. In this way, Jayanand received the seed of devotion out of causeless mercy of Srila Prabhupada. From the instructions and teaching presented by Srila Prabhupada, he understood his special relationship with Krishna, with Guru, and then there is an authorized process to establish this relationship. Jayanand Prabhu was completely enamored by Krishna consciousness. He would rise every day morning before 4, do a little arti, chant his round of Japa, read and cook prasad. Then he would go for his incense run selling incense stick. He never deviated from this. He was completely happy as long as he was practicing Krishna consciousness. Jayanand Prabhu worshipped prasadam. When a little prasadam spilled on the floor, he would lick it up. He loved to cook, eat, offer, and distribute prasadam in a big way. He even said prasadam with so much love and devotion that it made one immediately want to take some. Another example of his attachment to Krishna consciousness was his love for the holy name. He was always seen chanting and dancing enthusiastically during kirtans. One day, after working hard for 10 hours straight, when all the other devotees were looking forward to some rest, Jayanand Prabhu enthusiastically bounced into the temple room for kirtan. His japa was very intense, very focused, as he strove to personally associate with each and every syllable of the Mahamantra. What a wonderful instruction and example. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that the process of sadhana bhakti begins with a little faith, Shraddha. This faith then blossoms into a desire for devotee association, sadhu sangha, and then into bhajana kriya, devotional service. Similarly, Jayanand Prabhu, after receiving the association of Srila Prabhupada and other devotees at the temple, began to execute devotional service as per the instructions he received from his spiritual master. As he executed his sadhana sincerely, he became purified of the material impediments to devotional service, anartha nivritti, and began to manifest the all attractive qualities of a pure devotee. Humility was certainly Jayanand Prabhu's most prominent quality. He treated everyone as his superior, even new devotees. Although his service was glorious, he never wanted any glory. He avoided praise like the plague. Devotees goes to know that if they wanted to keep Jayanand association, they would better not praise him. His humility was very natural, and he always found something other than himself that was praiseworthy. Even though he was a senior devotee, older than most of the people around him, and eminently qualified, he was happy to simply show. Once a new boy at the temple wanted to do some service and was asked to help with the trash. The weekly trash run was done by Jayanand Prabhu, who cheerfully took the little help the boy gave. Later, when the boy became a devotee, he remembered thinking, quote, if the garbage man at this temple can be so blissful, just imagine what the rest of the devotees are like. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the third verse of Sikshastakam says down the qualification for offenseless chanting. Quote, one can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unquote. So Jayanand Prabhu exemplified this verse. He was so humble that just being in his association would make one feel ashamed of one's pride. He was a very special person, yet no one paid any special attention to him. That was just the way he liked the thing. Jayanand Prabhu was an expert at everything: cooking, preaching, deity worship, public relations, sankirtan, selling incense, construction, and anything that it took to spread Krishna consciousness. He was a tireless worker, first to rise in the morning and last to sleep at night. He was always running out to get flowers, washing dishes, cleaning the kitchen, or taking out the trash. Whatever service he was given, he would make sure that it was done, no matter how busy he was or how much personal hardship he had to endure for it. No matter how hard he was working, he would never stop for a nap during the day. He seems inexhaustible. Many times when Jayanand Prabhu went to Berkeley to distribute leftover prasadam, he would first organize a crew to clean the kitchen, working twice as hard as anybody else. Then he would transfer the prasadam, load it into the van, drive it to Berkeley, organize the distribution there, and have kirtan while all this was going on. Many years later, he readily accepted the position of the driver for Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, working side by side with brahmacharis, scarcely half his age. In spite of his advanced position and seniority, he never asked for anything special and readily accepted menial position under new devotees. In the Vishnu Purana, Sri Krishna informed Arjuna that one who claimed to be my devotee is actually not my devotee. But one who claims to be the devotee of my devotee is in actuality my devotee. So Jayanand Prabhu completely manifested this quality. He was always striving to be the Das Anudas, the servant of the servant. But there was no artificial humility in him. Material humility is relative. It is predicted on the qualification of the recipient. Jayanand Prabhu had spiritual humility. It was absolute, without any consideration of the status or qualities of the recipient. He served everyone and expected no one to serve him. The process of remembering, discussing, or enumerating the qualities and pastime of the Lord and His devotees is very purifying. I think this whole week we should continue discussion of the quality of Jayanand Prabhu, who in the relatively short time he was associated with Krishna consciousness, perfected his devotional service, and left us many instructions by his own example. Perhaps the most defining characteristic of Jayananda that he never criticized anyone. Even if a devotee did something that warranted criticism, he would usually not say anything or else makes the mistake appear as something perfectly natural. He never spoke harsh word or chastised anybody. Sometimes devotees would come to him with expansive ideas of how to spread Krishna consciousness. Jayanand Prabhu would encourage these ideas, however extraordinary. At the same time, he was not a fool. He could always pick up the right man for the job. In the Nectar of Instruction, verse number 5, Srila Rupa Goswami says that one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of propensity to criticize others. Jayanand could not even bear to hear the criticism of another devotee. If such a thing were happening, he would simply leave. These are the characteristics of an Uttamadhikari, one who has reached the highest level of perfection in his sadhana bhakti. Like the six Goswamis, Jayanand Prabhu was dear to both the gentle and the ruffians. He was as much at home with the Italians at the produce market as he was with the brahmacharis at the temple. Once a devotee was approached by a staggering drunk in San Francisco who looked at his robes and asked, "Hey, where is my old friend Jayananda?" Many devotees who took over Jayananda's old territory would meet people who would say things like, "Oh, where is Johnny Ananda?" Or "That man, he is the nicest and most pure man I have ever met." Or "I don't know much about your philosophy, but if Jayananda is into it, it must be all right." One woman public official on the San Francisco board was famous for giving the devotee a hard time during Rath Yatra. So one year, when the devotee approached her, she asked, "Where is Jayananda?" On hearing that he had passed away, she broke down and began to cry. The purity in Jayananda's heart would touch the most even cynical person. In Bhagavad Gita 5:7, Sri Krishna says, quote, one who works in devotion, who is pure soul, and who control his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Everyone loved Janan Prabhu, since he had completely transcended the bodily conceptions of life. He would approach a drunk, a hippie, or a devotee with the same compassion and enthusiasm. He spoke to the super soul in everyone, and everyone responded accordingly, like Maharaj Yudhishthira. Jayananda enemy was never born. It is said that though Krishna has nothing to do with the non-devotees, his devotees are even more compassionate than him and will try and engage them in Lord's service. And Jayanand Prabhu was eager to see everyone engage in Krishna's service. Whenever a new bhakta would come, Jayanand Prabhu made him feel he was engaged in important work. He was older, bigger, and stronger than just about anyone in the temple, and everyone was glad to be working under him. His preaching style was very simple and direct. He would speak from the heart to the heart. Once he was preaching to a couple of hippies while crawled under an automobile. All that was visible of him was a pair of legs. Yet the two hippies stood there, transfixed by his message. During Rath Yatra time, he would organize a crew of cynics, hippies, bloopers, and uncooperative personalities and non-devotees of the street to help build the carts. He would get them to work for 10 to 14 hours a day, always glorifying them. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Dantya Lila 7:11, it is stated, quote, the fundamental religious system in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Unless empowered by Krishna, one cannot propagate the Sankirtan movement. Unquote. And because of the genuine compassion in Jayanand Prabhu's, Krishna gave him the unique ability to make people want to render devotional service directly or indirectly. Jayanand Prabhu had almost no possessions even during his years as householder. Whatever he had, he used for the service of the temple and Srila Prabhupada. When he was gifted $5,000, he promptly donated to Srila Prabhupada. In the introduction of the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada acknowledged these contributions. For many years, he was almost single-handedly supporting the temple by driving his cab for 12 to 14 hours a day. And when he was in his last days of his life, he used the money given to him for his treatment to support the Rath Yatra in Los Angeles. He was extremely careful with what he considered to be Srila Prabhupada's money. When selling incense, he would sleep on park benches in bitter cold rather than spend money in a hotel. He used his considerable charm to get people to donate almost everything that was needed. What he could not get for the free, he made sure that he received a good value for the money he spent. His final lesson in material detachment came when it was discovered that he was suffering from cancer of the limbs and blood. Jain and Prabhu continued as if nothing has changed. When his body became frail and weak, he continued preaching, inspiring, and organizing from his bed in the hospital. For him, the body was simply a means to render devotional service to the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 6:254, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu summarizes in the phrase Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga, which means, quote, renunciation through the wisdom that comes from practicing devotional service, unquote. And Jayanand Prabhu was a true sannyasi, as one who did not just renounce material object, but actually renounced the desire for these material objects. He was always eager to use everything for the service of Krishna. However, he had no personal desire for anything material. And Jayanand Prabhu was the backbone of the Bay Area Rath Yatra for several years. Behind the scene, he would do everything for the preparation of the festival. He would bag food, flowers, fun, buy materials and build the cart. He would arrange for the permit, organizing the cooking and serving of prasad. All the things always went right down the wire. He would consistently succeed in fulfilling all these plans every year. And after the festival, he would cook a cake or a pie for each and every person who had somehow helped in the festival. Because of his effort, the Bay Area devotees to this day enjoy amazingly harmonious relationship with the city of Israel. In his last days, Jayanand Prabhu was busy organizing the Rath Yatra from the hospital bed. He would talk to people on the phone, send his associates to meet various persons, and things began to miraculously materialize. Every moment of his life was preciously used in service of Krishna. It is said that the pure devotional service brings about much opulence. Thought the devotees never seek them out. Once they are there, they are used for the service of Krishna. Jayanand apparently could function with very little or even no sleep. Toward the last few days of the Rath Yatra, he would sleep less than 3 hours a day. Yet he was the most energetic and enlivened member of the crew. His propensity to consume prasad was astounding. He could consume buckets of halwa, plates of samosas and potatoes without any side effect. When he was in his last days, he was put on an intravenous diet. Yet he would often ask devotee to sneak in huge quantities of samosas and cheese potatoes for him, which he would happily consume without any apparent distress. He would sometimes sleep in the Bhagavatam class, since he was very tall. Yet later on, he could perfectly quote from the class or have a deep discussion about his content. In Bhagavad Gita 4:26, Krishna declared, quote, one who is engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcend the modes of material nature and thus come to the level of Brahman. In the Narada Pancharatra, devotional service to the Lord is likened into a queen attended by her maidservant in the form of material opulences, liberation, and mysticism. Jayanand Prabhu never had any hankering for these, but when they came, he simply used them in the service of Krishna. Jayanand Prabhu has complete faith in Srila Prabhupada. He perfected his devotion by making the instructions of Srila Prabhupada the very core of his life. He was advanced enough to realize the real association was through following the instructions of the spiritual master. Unlike most of the other devotees who would go out of their way to get some personal association of Srila Prabhupada, Jayanand Prabhu was content to work in the background, carrying out his instructions. He exemplified the superiority of association by Vani over Vapu. Srila Prabhupada would invariably call up Jayananda when he was in a temple. Jayanand Prabhu would resist, saying, "No, I cannot go. I'm too dirty. I'm too fallen." Such were the transcendental exchanges between the spiritual master and his disciple. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, what's the time? It's 6:58. We'll be taking maybe next 4 or 5 minutes. We'll wrap up. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 19:151, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that among all the living entity wandering throughout the universe, one who is most fortunate comes in contact with a representative of the Supreme Personality Godhead and thus gets the opportunity to execute devotional service. And Jayanand Prabhu was one of these fortunate souls who came in contact with a pure devotee of the Lord, and under his guidance, he was able to perfect his devotional life. So Jayanand Prabhu passed away on May 1, 1977. He joined the Krishna consciousness movement in 1967, just when it is in its beginning, and left the planet a few months before Srila Prabhupada. In the scripture it is said that when the pure devotee of the Lord appear to execute his will, their associates invariably accompany them. One cannot help but speculate that Jayanand Prabhu had only come to serve his eternal spiritual master. The fact that Srila Prabhupada was on this planet at the time of his passing away is also very significant. It lets Srila Prabhupada affirm that everyone should follow the example of Jayanand Prabhu. So Jayanand Prabhu ki jai. On this most auspicious disappearance day of Jayanand Prabhu, we pray at his lotus feet to bestow his kind mercy upon all of us so we can remain fixed in our devotion and determination as Jayanand Prabhu has exhibited. So thank you very much for joining, and if Krishna so desire, we'll see you tomorrow before 2 o'clock. I would like to offer my humble obeisance that I ask of these wonderful devotees. Vanchakalpataruvasya kripa sindhuvaya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaisnavebhyo namo